بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. Tonight inshallah we'll talk about the third wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Aisha as-Siddiqa, the truthful Aisha, the son of the truthful and the friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhuma. Her father's original name is Abdullah. His nickname was Ibn Abi Qahafa. A lot of times he will refer himself to that particular nickname. And Abu Bakr, of course, was a nickname that he was known for more than his own name. His father also had his nickname Abu Qahafa, and he was known for that. His original name was Uthman. His father, meaning the grandfather of Abu Bakr, was Amir, and his father Amr, and son of Ka'ab, the son of Sa'ad, the son of Taym, the son of Murrah. This is where he meets the Prophet ﷺ in his lineage. So from her father's side, that's how she meets with the Prophet ﷺ, and that's the lineage that goes all the way back. Her mother, Ruman, that was her nickname that she was known for, and it's very interesting in the Arab tradition. People will be known more for their nickname than their original name. So they will always be known as Abu so-and-so, so-and-so, the father or the son of so-and-so, or the mother of so-and-so. So Ruman was her nickname, and her name was actually Zainab. And she goes with her father Amir, the grandfather Umayr, the son of Duhl, the son of Dahman, the son of Harith, the son of Taym, the son of Malik, the son of Kinana. That's where she meets from her mother's side to the Prophet ﷺ. And of course, with the mother, father and mother both meet in their lineage with Kinana, ibn Khuzaymah bin Mudrika, all the way to the end. She and her brother, Abdurrahman, are the two siblings from Ruman, from their own mother, biological mother, and then they had three step-other moms that also had children. And according to the historians, that she was the second wife of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu married four women. One was the wife of Ja'far ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, after he died in the Battle of Mu'tah in Sham. However, many other children, some scholars have mentioned 8, some have mentioned 6. The 8 is very simple, 2 from each wife. There are 2 children. So Abdurrahman was Aisha radiallahu anha's brother, and then she had other step brothers, Abdullah, and from the sisters, one was Kulthum. They play also a big role in, of course, the sister from the father's side, Asma. She and her brother play a big role in particular in the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. When the Prophet ﷺ was traveling to Medina, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, as we know the story, that he took whatever he had at home, the wealth, and also he had 2 camels ready to travel on. The Prophet ﷺ entrusted his children, in particular Asma, who was much older than Aisha radiallahu anha. She was entrusted with taking care of them leaving the cave of Thawr and moving on to Medina. And that was a very, very critical time because it was a matter of life and death for both of them. They were fleeing for their lives, and they kind of dodged the people, went south first into the Gharqad, stayed there for 3 nights, and those 3 days and nights, that's where Asma radiallahu anha, she would go back and forth to take food and provisions for both of them, for the father and for the Prophet ﷺ. And then she will bring back also news of the Prophet ﷺ to the family, and then when she goes the next day, she will take the news of what's happening outside of Mecca, outside of the cave, what's going on, who's coming. That's how, in the past, that's how you track people. So that job was given to Aisha radiallahu anha as a child. She would go and stay in the hills and look on the path, the highway where people usually travel, and they would check and see. She would look and see who's going, who's coming, and that was a big deal back in the day. You would notice, because people were going to find the Prophet ﷺ, so she was on the lookout to make sure that they're safe. And once things calmed down, then she would, Asma, her sister, will take the message to the Prophet ﷺ, and things that are better now, you can leave. So she played a big role, both of sisters, they played a big role in the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this story itself, it's a very significant story in the life of the Prophet ﷺ in particular, but also in the family of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, that includes Aisha as-Siddiqa radiallahu anha. She was born 5 to 6 years before Khadija radiallahu anha passed away, according to some. And the others say that no, she was born 10 to 11 years before Khadija radiallahu anha passed away. And we all know that Khadija radiallahu anha, she passed away on the 10th of Nubuwwah, 3 years prior to the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. We talked about the story of Sauda radiallahu anha's marriage, and there's a part of the story that I kind of skipped and went to because we were talking about Sayyidah Sauda radiallahu anha. She went to the Prophet ﷺ and asked the Prophet ﷺ about getting married again, the wife of Imam Abdurrahman Ahmad, and she mentioned Aisha radiallahu anha and Sauda. The Prophet ﷺ acknowledged both, and he said that you can go and ask them. So when Roman, she first received the message, and she came and she said, there's a great deal that a good khair is coming to your house, that I bring the proposal of the Prophet ﷺ for your daughter. Roman was like surprised, oh, she's just a kid. And because Abu Bakr and the Prophet ﷺ, they were very close in age. Abu Bakr was older in age, just a few years. But they were very close, they were like brothers. So Roman said, she is like your brother's daughter. She's of that age. She went back to the Prophet ﷺ and she said that this is what Roman is saying. The Prophet ﷺ said, yeah, I know that, but he is my brother in Islam. He's not my real brother. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it permissible for me if this marriage happens. So he gave a very, very logical answer. And then when she went back to Roman and said what the Prophet ﷺ said, and she said that, well, let's wait for Abu Bakr to come. When Abu Bakr came in, she said the same thing, that there's a great deal and a great khayr that came to your house. The proposal came of the Prophet ﷺ, and he was so happy, but he was like a little hesitant, and he was kind of worried also at the same time. And the reason of that was that he promised someone prior to this proposal to marry her to Mut'im, a person named Mut'im, to his son, who was not a believer, was not a Muslim at that time, and neither did later on accept Islam. So he said that I've already gave my word. And Abu Quhafa, the son of Abu Quhafa, he said the son of Abu Quhafa can never go against his word. I gave my word, it's a great honor. It's such a great thing that I cannot refuse, but I don't know what to do. I'm kind of now in between of these two. That I don't want to say no over here, and also I have to keep my word. So he goes and goes to the family and meets them. And when he gets there, the wife says, I don't think it's a great idea to have our son marry your daughter because she has changed her tradition, and we don't want our son to be following the same tradition. We want him to follow the same tradition, not to try this new thing out. And then Abu Bakr looks to the father and says, what is she saying? She says, yeah, you heard her. She said it. So then Abu Bakr says, then I think the deal is off the table. And he said, yes. And then he left so happy that, now I don't have to break my promise. They already backed off. I didn't have to say anything. And everything went smooth. He came back to and told the family that this is what happened, and it's a yes from our side. And then when the Prophet later, shortly after that, after the Prophet married Sauda radiallahu anha, he also married Abu Bakr radiallahu anha's daughter, Aisha as-Siddiqa radiallahu anha. Now there's something that happened before the marriage, and later on the Prophet will tell Aisha, and Aisha radiallahu anha, of course, we know all these things because she told us. And she said that the Prophet told me that I saw a dream, and I saw the angels coming down, and they had something covered with a silk cloth. And I see that, and I remove the silk cloth, and I see you. And I assumed that this was going to be my wife. In another riwayah, it's in Bukhari, many of the variations of the hadith, that this is your wife. That it was told to me that this is your wife. At that time, none of this happened, none of the proposal, all that. And the Prophet ﷺ said that if Allah wants it to happen, it will happen. That if it's from God, it will happen. It doesn't seem to be possible. How can someone who is in his 50s marrying a child? And we will talk about that, child marriage. How does that happen, and why, and what are the... Because that's a big thing that people ask these questions, that how could the Prophet ﷺ marry someone so young? And those hadith are mentioned very clear in many of the books of hadith, including Bukhari, that say that she was 6 years old when she got married, and she was brought to the Prophet ﷺ's home when she was 9, right? Some suggest she was 15, some suggest she was 18, but if it was 15 or 18, then there's no question about that. But this becomes a questionable thing because the time that we live in is something that it's something you can't think of. It's unthinkable or unacceptable in our society. But however, we say that the Prophet ﷺ was ordered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Someone said that they were struggling with, this was mentioned by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf. He mentioned this, that it happened to him, that a lady came to him in Hajj, during Hajj, when she heard about that Aisha, she was married to the Prophet at the age of 9, and she was troubled about it, and she was crying all the time, and she wanted for something to clarify, because sometimes you believe in something, but it's hard to accept it. And then one morning she came and she said, Sheikh, and she was crying, and she said, I saw the Prophet ﷺ in my dream, and I asked the Prophet the same question, why did you marry Aisha? She was so young. And the Prophet said that, well, Abu Bakr, the father of Aisha, he was honored by me marrying his daughter Aisha. And then when he said that, I was just content. I felt the contentment and felt happy, and all the doubts just went away. That the father, Abu Bakr, it was his honor for the Prophet ﷺ to marry his daughter. And he felt that honor. He was honoring Abu Bakr. The Prophet ﷺ was honoring Abu Bakr by marrying his daughter. And we will see, and I've mentioned this also in the story of of others like Hafsa radiallahu anha, and the story of Umar radiallahu anha wanting to marry, and Abu Bakr wanting to marry the daughter of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Fatima. It was something that they were very open about, and it was kind of normal at that time. But the best answer is that at that time we see that she was engaged before the Prophet ﷺ. Nobody had an issue with it. If it was an issue at that time, the enemies did not leave any possibility that they had to say, wow, look at this person, he's marrying a child, right? They could have said that. None of them said that. It was never a problem. Nobody even asked that question. Even until late 50s and 60s, there were still states in the United States where a father could marry a daughter at any age, and then it became restricted to 12. I don't know what's the updated.
New Hampshire.
12.
Less than that, and now they're changing these.
So
it's
they're
not
still
passed,
changing.
Not
So
passed yet.
yeah, there you go. I didn't know that. And less than 10, you still can marry your child. But however, in many of the states, it was totally fine, completely fine, if the guardian wants to marry their child at the age of 12 or more. Back then, age of 9 is equivalent to age 15 or even more at our times. Some scholars say that no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala conducted this marriage, showing the Prophet ﷺ in his dream, saying that this is your wife. Meaning, what does that mean? That Allah has already made the nikah, He's already done. She's already your wife. So if Allah wanted to do something, what could the Prophet ﷺ or the other people could do? But that's a very weak. I don't like that argument. Because there was, in fact, a nikah, a proper ceremony. There was a sermon done, and the Prophet ﷺ set a mahar of 500 dirham, and the Prophet ﷺ actually did not have the money. And Abu Bakr lended to the Prophet ﷺ 12 uqiyah, that was equivalent to 500 dirham, and that was the mahar that the Prophet ﷺ gave to Aisha radiallahu anha, and that was a very standard mahar that he gave to most of his wives. So that was a little bit about herself and a little bit about her marriage. Inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam.